So is it okay for us to bring back and remind you of what it is that you have to do? For example, it says, what I did learn is it says that most of us talk about finding the root cause. I didn't do this because the root cause. What this does is change your perspective that says, maybe the root cause is caused by the system. Maybe you behave and didn't do that because the system said it's okay for you to do that, and it reverses it. So your mindset has changed. The behavior that you have is caused by that system. Unless we change that system, the behavior doesn't change. So we have come up with this idea of entities, connectivity, objective goals, but I want to make sure that you understand each one of these well. On the interconnectivity that we have, I want you to see that you had a tremendous wealth of information, flow, variation, disruption, and I can teach you queuing theory as it becomes necessary. So that when you look at that interconnectivity, it's not like, well, what do you think? What do you think? You have the mindset of how you want to analyze it. Then, now the idea is that if I could do this, I must manage my stock. What is it that I'm managing in the system? That stock, whatever I define as the stock. And how am I going to manage it? How am I going to manage it? Through feedback loops. How many of you have bad behavior? That your family tells you that you have bad behavior? But you don't behave as bad as they tell you that you are. Is that true? Why is that? How's that? How have we managed to not see you in prison, but see you in this class? How's that happen?
Makes more of an impact when it's more dramatic. Yes.
Which one?
If you emphasize something, it makes it more impactful on whoever's doing the behavior.
So the stock in this case is what? Your freedom. How did we manage your freedom? Because if it was not for this, what would happen? If there was no feedback from your parents, there was no feedback from your high school teachers, there was no feedback from your church, there was no feedback from your spouse, from your family, where would you be today?
You would be unstable. I mean, that's what control system, feedback loop, it diverges or goes someplace we don't want it to.
I just want to, because see, you have to kind of think about, because to me, anytime I read something and somebody says feedback loop, it's just a word, but it doesn't resonate with me. It's just a word that I have to memorize. So what I was thinking about was when I was looking at these feedback loops, I would say, if I did not have feedback mechanisms, if did not have those feedback mechanisms, where would I be today as compared to where I am?
You don't know.
You continue to find your limit. You keep trying to, it's like, well, if I'm not getting any pushback, I'm going to keep testing the system until I find it.
So by testing the system, could you end up in prison?
Yes.
How many of us would end up in prison? I mean, I was a bad kid. I mean, I just was a bad kid. Okay, now tell me about Y12 ORNL. Does it have feedback mechanisms? Tell me, what does these feedback mechanisms do for you? What do they do?
In our case, they increase the cycle time to an astronomical level.
That's not what you're supposed to say.
Oh, sorry. They keep us stable.
Yeah, there you go. Give me examples of feedback mechanisms that you currently have at work.
Assessments, audits.
Okay, let's take a performance evaluation, audits. But there are beyond personal, because we're talking about now about individual. I'm the entity, and therefore there's a feedback on my entity. There's also a feedback on what? Your machines.
Metrics.
There are feedbacks on what? Your information. There are feedbacks on all of these things. The way your system is currently designed, okay, in terms of entities, in terms of the interconnectivity, and in terms of how the loops are providing you information. Do you believe that it's a good system or a bad system? No, it's not binary. Well, do you think it can be improved upon? Well, every system can. I mean, so it's not like, oh my God, we have a big issue. How would you change the feedback mechanism? What do you get reports on that tells you how to operate next week?
Ours are too specific. We focus so much on the small little portion because that's what this manager is worried about, and don't really look at how that's going to help the overall goal.
Yeah.
And so we can have a lot of people that make themselves look really good because they have this one little area that they make this big issue out of, and then they make that better. But it didn't really change anything. It just made them look good.
All right. Feedback mechanisms. Do you have, I want, again, this has to resonate. It just cannot be words. What kind of feedback mechanism do you have for your kids?
Time out.
Huh?
Time out. When I do something wrong, you send me to time out.
But feedback, let's talk about, I'm not understanding this feedback mechanism. Feedback mechanism says that some information is transferred from somewhere to you, and therefore, based on that information, you adjust or do something with that system. Is that what it is? So it's not the action itself, it is the ability to capture this data and information, relay it to you, so that you can make a decision. What is the stock? The well-being of your kids. What is the feedback mechanisms that you use?
I guess I go out on a limb. My reports from teachers and or report cards or.
Okay, fair enough. Report cards. So are you saying that you get academic reports from your school, and then what do you do with that?
I guess I process it and see if it meets my standards.
And what is their standard?
I don't know. At this point, their minds are so young. It's not like A, B, and C.
Do you see that? That just because we put feedback loops in, feedback loops had a tremendous impact on how that system behaves. I know I'm overstepping, but chapter 2, if you would please go to chapter 2, because I don't have a lot of time. I would like Mark to come up and talk. But again, this is simple reading, but I want you to take you through quickly in what this chapter is all about. This chapter starts giving you generic definitions of the different type of systems that exist. Okay? If you open up the book, it talks about one-stock systems. Okay? So if it starts with one-stock systems, does it mean that there could be more than one-stock systems? Define to me, I can't remember what stock was. When I say 2 stocks, what does it mean? the amount of energy is a stock. I must manage that to be able to manage my production facility. My production facility is another stock. This could be another stock, so there's two stocks that are combined. So what I would like you to do, if it's possible, because I've got just a minute or two, would you please read chapter 2? And what I'd like you to do, don't memorize. Do not memorize. For everything, what I do, and this is what helps me, I read this thing about one-stop systems, and let me put my glasses on. And it talks about a stock with two competing balancing loops. I'm not worried about that. Two balancing loops. And the example they gave was, my God, if there was a furnace that was heating a room up, but the house or the room had leakages, and then heat would go out. So I'm heating, but I'm losing heat on the other side. So this loop that tells me, my God, what the temperature should be compared to the outside is one competing compared to how much I heat the house. Do you see that? That's an example. But what I do is I don't listen to them. I have to make my own examples of it, related to something that makes sense to me. So for every one of these, I sit down, and as I read through this, what I do is I say, okay, what is an example that is relevant to me that I would put in? And I would draw that out. And I'll say, I've got a system, it's not a thermostat, it's something else. I've got two balancing things, etc. down the line. That's what I do. And what I would like you to do, if it's possible, is as you go through chapter 2 and read each of these subsections, okay? Because then you're going to talk about a balancing loop versus a reinforcing loop. All right, so we're going to talk about that. What I'd like you to do is to come up with your own examples. Fair enough? Are we okay? Are you experts on interconnectivity?
Yes.
Give me one sentence that tells me that. Tell me. How do you look at, tell me why you're an expert. Because you can look at a system from a variety of different tools and techniques that you have. Each of these gives you a different perspective. But you can provide for me, if I was to hire you, you would come back and say, let me show you 6 different perspectives on this interconnectivity. By combining all of these 6 analyses, let me tell you what I recommend. Yes? Right. So, Mark can come and tell you what I said is correct. He can give you examples, or he can say, that's not the way it works.
What is the time for the rest of the class?
1 more hour.
Okay. You take a break, or you just go?
That's up to you. Would you like a break? All right, but here's the key. Here's the key. You have to give them, so that we reduce the variation, and say, you will be back in your seats at whatever time.
5?
According to that clock.
What's that?
That clock?
Oh, I took your book.
Yeah. I looked at it.